When love turns to betrayal and loyalty becomes a weapon, Nicholas Kane must uncover the truth before the woman he trusts the most and the man he fears the least destroy everything he has left. Nicholas Kane had always believed that discipline was the only thing in life that never betrayed you. At 51, he still woke up before dawn, his body automatically tuned to the rhythms that had been drilled into him during 12 years of service in the Special Forces. Denver's thin mountain air felt sharp in his lungs every morning run, and though his knees sometimes reminded him of the price of age, he still kept pace with men 20 years younger. The streets were quiet at that hour, just the sound of his boots on the pavement and his breath in the cold. He had traded the military for civilian life years ago, moving into a modest but comfortable house in Highlands Ranch with his wife, Sabrina. At 45, Sabrina was striking, hazel eyes, auburn hair that she dyed to keep the grays at bay, and the kind of professional poise she had honed through her job in finance. They had married when Nicholas had first come back from overseas, and she had given him stability when his life had been a whirlwind of deployments, briefings, and danger. But stability had begun to shift into something else, something fragile. Nicholas had sensed it in the subtle changes. The way Sabrina lingered longer at the gym after her workouts, the faint traces of perfume he didn't recognize, the hushed tone when she answered certain text messages. Her smile still reached him at the dinner table, but the warmth behind it seemed rehearsed, like she was playing a role she wasn't sure she wanted anymore. For months, he had told himself it was midlife restlessness, perhaps her way of coping with the fact that they had never been able to have children. He had been patient, even indulgent, because patience was what the military had taught him. Patience and vigilance. You wait. You watch. You don't move until you understand the full terrain. And then Zachary Blake entered the picture. Zachary was everything Nicholas wasn't, at least on the surface. 29, chiseled physique, the kind of confidence that came not from battlefields, but from mirrors and Instagram likes. A trainer at Iron Forge Fitness, the gym Sabrina had joined 3 months earlier. Nicholas had heard the name more than once. Zachary says this exercise is better for your core. Zachary thinks my form is improving, and Zachary recommended this protein shake. At first, it had seemed harmless, the way clients mentioned their trainers. But then the texts had started arriving at odd hours, and Nicholas noticed that Sabrina's workouts seemed to stretch longer than any training plan reasonably required. Still, he said nothing. He simply watched, until the evening when he walked into Iron Forge Fitness and found Zachary standing in front of him, muscles flexing, voice raised loud enough to command attention from the evening crowd. "Walk out before I embarrass you, old man." The words echoed across the gym floor, bouncing off the rows of dumbbells and treadmills. Conversations halted, heads turned, and phones quietly angled to record. The confrontation had been staged. Zachary wanted witnesses, wanted to humiliate him publicly. Nicholas didn't rise to the bait. He simply sat down on a bench, unlaced his boots with steady hands, and let the crowd's restless anticipation build. He'd seen this before, the cocky energy of a young man who thought dominance was earned by shouting louder, by performing. Zachary was still talking, mocking him, bringing up Sabrina, all while making sure his reflection in the mirror looked impressive. Nicholas only thought one thing. The kid doesn't realize he's already lost. But what mattered more than Zachary's taunts was the truth Nicholas had pieced together in the weeks leading up to this moment. He had caught Sabrina meeting Zachary at a cafe that had nothing to do with fitness sessions. He had noticed her gym bag untouched while she claimed to have worked out. He had smelled perfume instead of sweat when she came home. The Special Forces had trained him to read enemy patterns, to notice the smallest shifts in behavior. Sabrina's tells were obvious to him now. Showering immediately after returning home, flipping her phone face down during dinner, laughter that belonged more to a flirtation than a marriage. He had even taken the step of hiring a private investigator, because while he trusted his instincts, he wanted undeniable evidence before moving his pieces into place. The investigator delivered. Photographs of Sabrina leaning close to Zachary over coffee, text messages about missing him and our next chance to sneak away. Nicholas hadn't confronted her. Not yet. Timing mattered. And this spectacle at Iron Forge was Zachary's mistake. By making it public, he had given Nicholas exactly the stage he needed. He let Zachary swing first, dodged, countered without striking, redirected every reckless move until the young trainer was sprawled against weight racks, rowing machines, and dumbbells clattering across the floor. The crowd laughed, phones captured every second, and Zachary's bravado unraveled in real time. When the trainer, desperate, grabbed a dumbbell to use as a weapon, Nicholas ended it. Wrist lock, dumbbell dropped, voice calm and cutting. Attempted assault with a weapon. You sure you want to go down that road? The fear in Zachary's eyes told Nicholas everything. This wasn't about fighting anymore. It was about exposure. So Nicholas exposed him. He dialed Sabrina on speakerphone, letting her voice fill the gym. He told her exactly where he was, having a conversation with your trainer. The pause, the panic in her tone, the desperate suggestion to talk privately, all played out in front of 40 witnesses and dozens of cameras. And then he revealed the parts Sabrina hadn't known, that his long hours, his distance, weren't because of neglect or indifference. They were because he had been quietly arranging cancer treatments for her mother, working tirelessly to secure specialists and insurance approvals. He had been carrying the weight of her family's survival while she sought excitement in the arms of a boy who couldn't land a punch. When Sabrina finally rushed into the gym, the damage was already done. Zachary fled in humiliation. The crowd had recorded everything, the affair, the lies, the confrontation. Nicholas told her calmly, in front of them all, that divorce papers were waiting at home, that the accounts were closed, the assets secured, the legal steps already taken. And then he walked away. 6 months later, Nicholas sat in his downtown Denver apartment, sipping coffee as the morning light filtered through the blinds. The newspaper headline caught his eye. Iron Forge Fitness closes after viral scandal. The viral videos had destroyed Zachary Blake's career. No gym in Colorado would hire him, and his dreams of becoming a fitness influencer were over. Last Nicholas heard, he was selling supplements in a strip mall store, his reputation permanently reduced to a cautionary meme. The young trainer humiliated by a man twice his age. Sabrina hadn't fared much better. She moved in with her sister after the divorce. The court, armed with evidence of her affair, had granted Nicholas the house and most of the assets. She had tried to fight, but her betrayal had been too public, too undeniable. The social circles she had once cherished turned their backs on her. Nicholas had found peace in his own way. He began running again, hiking the mountain trails, rediscovering the Colorado landscapes he'd once ignored in the bustle of duty and survival. His sister texted from California, saw the videos online. Proud of you for handling it with class. He didn't feel pride. What he felt was closure. In the quiet moments, when the sun dipped behind the Rockies, Nicholas knew something still lingered. The story wasn't finished. The humiliation had consequences, ripples spreading farther than he had anticipated. Because men like Zachary Blake don't always accept defeat quietly, and women like Sabrina Kane don't always let go when their carefully constructed lives collapse. Somewhere in Denver's restless sprawl, Nicholas's past choices were weaving themselves into a future he hadn't yet imagined. A future where betrayal was only the first step into something darker. And Nicholas Kane, soldier turned survivor, would soon learn that walking away from one battlefield didn't mean the war was over. Nicholas Kane had always believed that the foundation of his life rested on unshakable ground. His marriage to Sabrina was the anchor, the constant in a world that often tested him. But lately, that ground was shifting, cracking beneath his feet, leaving him stumbling in the dark, questioning every shadow, every silence, every smile that wasn't his. The weeks following Sabrina's growing closeness with Zachary Blake were a slow suffocation for Nicholas. At first, it had seemed harmless, his wife spending more time at the gym, training sessions stretching longer than he thought necessary. She came home glowing, laughter lingering on her lips, her body more toned, her confidence radiating like sunlight. Nicholas wanted to be proud of her, wanted to support her, but pride was quickly eclipsed by a gnawing doubt that refused to leave him alone. It wasn't just Sabrina's transformation that unnerved him. It was Zachary himself. The trainer carried himself with the charm of a man who knew the effect he had on others. His voice was steady, his eyes always too direct, his compliments too carefully placed. Nicholas noticed how Sabrina spoke of Zachary with casual admiration. "He really pushes me," or "Zachary believes I can do more than I think." Nicholas would nod, pretending to share her excitement, but behind every smile was the tightening coil of suspicion. He told himself he was being paranoid, that Sabrina loved him, that Zachary was simply doing his job. And yet, every time Sabrina's phone buzzed with a message, she tucked away too quickly. Every time she returned late from a training session with excuses that felt rehearsed, Nicholas felt the edges of his sanity fraying. It started small, an evening when Sabrina was late, well past the time she usually returned. Nicholas sat at the kitchen table, the clock ticking loudly in the silence of their home. Dinner had gone cold, the wine untouched. When she finally walked in, her hair damp as though she had showered elsewhere, she offered a soft smile that didn't quite reach her eyes. "Sorry," she said, slipping out of her shoes. Training ran longer than expected. Nicholas forced a smile, swallowing the questions clawing at his throat. "That late? You usually call." Her shrug was nonchalant, almost dismissive. "I didn't realize the time. Zachary wanted me to push harder, and I lost track." The mention of his name was like gasoline on a flame. Nicholas said nothing, but in his mind, the seed of doubt rooted itself deeper. That night, while Sabrina slept peacefully beside him, Nicholas stared at the ceiling, his chest tight with an ache he couldn't name. What Nicholas didn't know was that Zachary's influence was deliberate, calculated. Zachary Blake wasn't just a trainer. He was a master of reading people, of finding cracks, and widening them until they became fault lines. He recognized Sabrina's vulnerabilities, her desire to feel alive, to be admired, to be more than just Nicholas Kane's wife. During their sessions, Zachary spoke words that lingered in Sabrina's mind long after she left the gym. "You're stronger than you think. Nicholas doesn't see the woman you're becoming, does he? You deserve to be noticed, Sabrina, not just as a wife, but as yourself." At first, Sabrina dismissed them as motivational cliches, but gradually, they seeped into her subconscious, intertwining with the frustrations she didn't dare voice aloud. The long stretches of silence at home, Nicholas's distracted demeanor, the way he seemed more married to his fears than to her. Zachary was patient. He didn't push Sabrina toward betrayal. He merely opened doors, left them ajar, and let her curiosity guide her steps. Nicholas began noticing patterns. The way Sabrina dressed for training now, more carefully chosen outfits, subtle touches of perfume that had no place in a sweaty gym. The glow in her cheeks when she spoke of Zachary, the distant look in her eyes when she thought no one was watching. He tried to confront her one evening. "Sabrina," he said, his voice taut, "is there something going on with you and Zachary?" She froze, her fork midway to her lips. For a moment, guilt flickered across her face, but then she laughed, a hollow, too loud sound. "Zachary? He's my trainer, Nicholas. That's all." Nicholas searched her eyes, desperate for reassurance, but all he found was a wall he couldn't climb. He wanted to believe her, but the seed of doubt had grown into a thorn vine, tightening around his chest. It was at a dinner party when Nicholas's paranoia found new fuel. A colleague mentioned seeing Sabrina and Zachary together outside the gym, laughing over coffee. "Quite the pair," the man said with a grin. They looked close. Nicholas felt the blood drain from his face. He forced a smile, changed the subject, but inside his heart was a storm. That night, when Sabrina came home late again, Nicholas didn't ask questions. He didn't accuse. He simply watched her, memorizing the way her eyes avoided his, the way her laughter was laced with something distant, untouchable. For Sabrina, the world had become a battlefield of emotions. She loved Nicholas. At least she thought she did. But Zachary awakened something in her that Nicholas no longer touched. Excitement, desire, the thrill of being wanted. One evening, After an especially intense session, Zachary lingered, his gaze holding hers longer than necessary. "You know," he murmured, his voice low, "you deserve more than suspicion and silence." Sabrina's breath caught. She wanted to protest, to defend Nicholas, but the words died in her throat. Zachary's hand brushed hers, just a fleeting touch, but enough to ignite a fire she couldn't ignore. That night, lying beside Nicholas, Sabrina felt a guilt that burned hotter than desire. She wanted to confess, to pour out the confusion in her heart, but fear held her tongue. Nicholas wouldn't understand. He would see betrayal where she saw only longing. The walls of Nicholas's world were closing in. Sleep eluded him, his dreams haunted by visions of Sabrina and Zachary together, laughing at his blindness. He began to withdraw, retreating into silence, his mind consumed by paranoia. At work, he made mistakes. At home, he was distant, cold. He started checking Sabrina's phone when she wasn't looking, searching for evidence that wasn't there, or was hidden too well. Every smile from Sabrina felt like a lie. Every touch felt rehearsed. He loved her desperately, but that love was poisoned now, corroded by doubt. It was a rainy night when the facade finally cracked. Sabrina had gone out for another late session, and Nicholas waited in the living room, the clock ticking louder with each passing minute. When the door finally opened and Sabrina stepped inside, Nicholas's composure shattered. "Where were you?" he demanded, his voice trembling. She blinked, startled. "At the gym. Where else would I be? With him." The accusation slipped out, raw and jagged. Her eyes widened, then narrowed. "Nicholas, I'm tired of this. Tired of your constant suspicion. Zachary is my trainer. You're my husband. Why isn't that enough?" "Because I can see it in your eyes," Nicholas whispered. "You're slipping away from me." The silence that followed was deafening. Sabrina's lips parted, as if to protest, but no words came. And in that silence, Nicholas knew his greatest fear was becoming reality. What neither of them fully understood was that Zachary had orchestrated this from the start. Every word, every gesture was designed to wedge them apart, to make Sabrina question, to make Nicholas unravel. Zachary thrived on control, on bending lives to his will, and the Canes were his latest conquest. As part 2 closes, the stage is set for betrayal to reach its peak. Nicholas's paranoia at its breaking point, Sabrina caught between love and desire, and Zachary, tightening his grip, waiting for the perfect moment to strike. And in the shadows, the question lingers. Will love survive, or will betrayal consume them all? Nicholas Kane sat alone in his dimly lit study, the faint glow of his desk lamp spilling across financial reports he hadn't truly read in days. His hand gripped a glass of whiskey, the amber liquid trembling as though it carried the same unease coursing through his veins. He had built his life around order, precision, and discipline. Yet now, everything was unraveling. Sabrina, once the anchor to his restless ambition, seemed distant, distracted, her laughter reserved not for him, but for that man. Zachary Blake. The name burned in Nicholas's mind like poison. He remembered the first evening he had met him, an overly confident trainer with that piercing gaze, the kind that dissected people, stripped them down, and rebuilt them according to his will. At first, Nicholas had brushed him off as harmless, someone who offered his wife motivation and fitness. But over time, subtle things had changed. Sabrina's phone buzzed late into the night. Her smile, softer and fuller when Zachary's name appeared on the screen. The gym sessions ran longer than necessary. It wasn't just paranoia anymore. It was betrayal bleeding through the cracks. Sabrina Kane tugged at her coat as she stepped into the chilly evening air, leaving the gym later than usual. Her muscles burned, but the sensation was intoxicating. It wasn't only physical. Zachary had a way of pushing her limits, of unlocking something inside her that Nicholas never touched anymore. It wasn't just his body or his charm. It was the way he saw her. With Nicholas, she was the wife of a successful man, expected to be composed, elegant, and supportive. With Zachary, she was simply Sabrina, a woman with flaws, desires, strength, and vulnerabilities. You pushed yourself harder today, Zachary said as he appeared beside her, his shirt damp with sweat, his expression carrying both admiration and something else, something more dangerous. Sabrina's heart fluttered. You don't let me quit. You're not the type who wants to quit, he replied, his voice low, steady. You just needed someone to remind you what you're capable of. Their eyes met, and for a fleeting moment, Sabrina felt the world tilt. She looked away, fumbling with her car keys, but the heat lingered. Zachary didn't push further. He never did. Instead, he planted seeds, knowing they would grow on their own. Nicholas began noticing the distance in everything. The way Sabrina spoke to him at dinner, her tone clipped, polite, but lacking warmth. Her perfume lingered longer when she returned from the gym. Even her silence was loaded with meaning. He found himself replaying conversations, studying her gestures, searching for evidence. One night, he picked up her phone from the counter when she stepped into the shower. His heart thundered against his ribs as he unlocked it with a passcode he had memorized weeks ago. The messages weren't explicit, but they were enough. Zachary, proud of your progress today. You're stronger than you think. Sabrina, couldn't have done it without you. Zachary, you don't give yourself enough credit. You deserve more. Sabrina, thank you. It means a lot. That last reply crushed Nicholas. 3 dots had appeared after it, as though she had been typing more, but deleted it. That silence screamed louder than any words. Nicholas's fist tightened around the phone. He placed it back carefully before Sabrina emerged, his face calm, betraying none of the storm raging inside him. The weeks that followed were a descent into psychological warfare. Nicholas's paranoia grew claws. He began showing up unexpectedly at the gym under the guise of checking in. He asked Sabrina probing questions about her training, masking them as casual curiosity. Zachary, however, played his part with unnerving subtlety. When Nicholas appeared, Zachary greeted him respectfully, professionally, never stepping over the line. Yet, behind those eyes, Nicholas saw something, a calculated defiance, a quiet challenge. One evening, Nicholas stayed back after Sabrina had gone to bed. He pored over Zachary's social media, digging into every photo, every comment, every tag event. Women praised him endlessly. Motivator, leader, inspiration. Some used words that dripped with intimacy. Nicholas's stomach churned. This wasn't just about Sabrina. Zachary thrived on being desired, worshipped. Nicholas knew men like him. Predators hiding behind charm. Sabrina, meanwhile, was drowning in conflicting emotions. She still loved Nicholas. At least, she thought she did. But their marriage had become a fortress of silence, built on routines and expectations. Zachary had slipped through the cracks, igniting something she thought was long dead. One evening, after an intense session, Zachary handed her a bottle of water, his hand brushing hers. The contact was brief, but it sent a shiver through her. You've been distracted lately, Zachary said, his tone casual, but his eyes sharp. Is everything okay? Sabrina hesitated. It's complicated. Sometimes, he said softly. Complicated is just another word for trapped. His words lingered long after she drove home. She lay in bed beside Nicholas that night, staring at the ceiling, her heart heavy with guilt and longing. Nicholas shifted in his sleep, unaware of the war raging inches away from him. Nicholas's breaking point came on a stormy Friday night. Sabrina claimed she had a late session at the gym, but when Nicholas called the front desk, they told him Zachary had canceled all evening appointments. His chest tightened. Lies. He drove through the rain, his tires splashing across wet asphalt, his grip on the steering wheel like iron. He tracked Sabrina's phone, something he had set up weeks earlier. The blinking dot on the screen guided him to a quiet street near Zachary's apartment. Nicholas's heart hammered as he parked a block away, watching from the shadows. His worst fear materialized before his eyes. Sabrina's car was parked outside Zachary's building. For nearly an hour, Nicholas sat in silence, rain pounding on the roof of his car, his mind unraveling. Inside Zachary's apartment, Sabrina sat on the couch, her arms wrapped around herself. She had come only to talk, she told herself. To clear her head, to figure out what she wanted. Zachary poured her a glass of wine, his movements deliberate, controlled. He sat across from her, studying her with that same piercing gaze. "You don't have to explain," he said quietly. "I see it every time you walk through the gym doors. The weight you carry, the way he doesn't see you anymore." Tears stung Sabrina's eyes. "It's not that simple." "Maybe not," Zachary replied, leaning forward, his voice dropping to a whisper. "But sometimes the truth isn't simple. Sometimes it's just undeniable." Her pulse raced as the distance between them dissolved. She didn't know if it was the wine, the exhaustion, or the longing. But when Zachary brushed a strand of hair from her face, she didn't pull away. Back in the rain-soaked car, Nicholas watched the lights flicker inside Zachary's apartment. His world collapsed in silence. He felt betrayed, hollow, consumed by rage. But instead of storming in, he stayed. He watched. He waited. Something darker began to take root inside him. This wasn't over. This was just the beginning. Nicholas Kane stood in the dimly lit study, the storm outside clawing at the windows as though nature itself sensed the coming confrontation. The leather-bound journal lay open on his desk, pages filled with frantic notes, names, dates, suspicions, and truths pieced together in jagged fragments. For weeks, his paranoia had consumed him, but now the evidence was undeniable. Sabrina and Zachary's secret meetings, the hushed phone calls, the lingering touches Nicholas had pretended not to see, all painted a picture he could no longer escape. Yet what haunted him most was not the betrayal itself, but the gnawing question: how deep did it go? Downstairs, Sabrina moved quietly through the living room, her silk robe brushing against her legs as she poured herself a glass of red wine. Her reflection in the glass doors seemed fractured, almost foreign, as though she no longer recognized the woman staring back at her. She loved Nicholas once, deeply. His stability had been her anchor. But somewhere along the way, cracks formed. Loneliness had seeped in like water through stone, and Zachary, charming, attentive Zachary, had filled the void. But now, she wondered if she had gone too far. Nicholas appeared suddenly in the doorway, his shadow long and sharp. His voice was low, dangerous in its restraint. "How long, Sabrina?" Her hand trembled slightly, the wine glass catching the flicker of the storm's lightning. She had rehearsed excuses, half-truths, but in that moment, under his gaze, they all died on her lips. "Nicholas, please. It's not what you think." His laugh was bitter, hollow. He moved closer, tossing a photo onto the table between them. It was of Sabrina and Zachary in the gym's private studio, her hand brushing his cheek, his lips dangerously near hers. "I think it's exactly what I feared." Before she could answer, a knock rattled the front door. The sound was sharp, deliberate. Nicholas's jaw tightened. He already knew who it was. Sabrina's face paled. "Don't," she began, but Nicholas was already moving. He yanked the door open, and there stood Zachary Blake, rain clinging to his shirt, his grin infuriatingly calm despite the tension in the air. "Evening, Nicholas. Thought we should clear the air." Nicholas's fist clenched. "You've already poisoned enough." Zachary stepped inside uninvited, his eyes darting briefly to Sabrina, then back to Nicholas. His confidence was unsettling, the kind of arrogance that came from knowing he had the upper hand. "Don't make this harder than it needs to be," Zachary said smoothly. "Sabrina deserves better. She deserves someone who sees her, who listens, not a man drowning in suspicion and control." The words hit Nicholas like a blade. Sabrina's silence cut even deeper. "Is that true?" Nicholas asked her, voice raw, cracking with desperation. "After everything, after us, you'd throw it away for him?" Tears welled in Sabrina's eyes. "I didn't mean for this to happen," she whispered. "But Zachary made me feel alive again. You were shutting me out, Nicholas. Always locked in your head, your work, your doubts." Nicholas staggered back as though struck. Betrayal burned through his veins, but beneath it was something worse. The realization that maybe, just maybe, he had pushed her away without realizing. The storm outside roared louder. Zachary stepped closer to Sabrina, placing a hand on her shoulder, possessive, deliberate. Nicholas's rage erupted. Don't touch her. He lunged, slamming Zachary against the wall. The two men grappled violently, furniture toppling, glass shattering. Sabrina screamed, begging them to stop, but neither listened. It was more than a fight. It was years of love, jealousy, betrayal, and desperation colliding in one brutal explosion. At last, Nicholas pinned Zachary, his hand gripping a shattered glass shard. His chest heaved, breath ragged, eyes wild. "I should end this now," he hissed. Sabrina rushed forward, grabbing Nicholas's arm. "Please don't. This isn't you." Her voice pierced the haze. Nicholas froze, trembling, the shard inches from Zachary's throat. His reflection in the broken glass was monstrous, unrecognizable. Slowly, with agonizing control, he dropped the shard. Zachary smirked, but Nicholas's voice cut sharply. "Get out. If I ever see you near her again, I swear." Zachary adjusted his shirt, his grin unwavering. "You can't fight the truth, Nicholas. She's already mine." Then, with a mocking bow toward Sabrina, he left, the storm swallowing him into the night. Silence fell. Only the sound of Sabrina's sobs filled the room. Nicholas turned to her, eyes hollow. "Tell me, Sabrina, is he right?" Her lips quivered. "I don't know anymore." The words shattered him. He staggered back, unable to breathe. For Nicholas, this was worse than death. Not knowing if love could be salvaged, or if betrayal had already written the final chapter. He left the house that night, walking into the storm, unsure if he would ever return. The Kane estate stood quiet under a calm summer sky. Sabrina walked through the garden alone, her hand brushing the roses Nicholas had once planted for her. He had never returned home. Some said he was traveling. Others whispered he was rebuilding himself far away. She never knew for sure. As for Zachary, his charm eventually withered. His control turned suffocating, his promises empty. Sabrina ended things, realizing too late that she had been nothing more than a conquest in his twisted game. Now, she lived with the silence of choices made and bridges burned. Every evening, she looked toward the horizon, wondering if Nicholas was out there, if forgiveness was possible, or if love, once broken, could ever truly be rebuilt. The suspense lingered, the ending unresolved in her heart. Because sometimes, the most haunting betrayals aren't the ones that end with violence, but the ones that leave you forever waiting.